8th Millis School Committee meeting. I am Shana Canistrari, Secretary. Chairwoman Robin Briggs will be in a little later this evening. I will start with a roll call. To my left, Mr. Conroy.
Here.
Mr. Powers.
Here.
And Superintendent Mulaney.
Yep.
Denise Gibbons is absent.
And Mr.
Chairwoman
Oh.
Briggs. Sorry. No, go right
And
ahead.
Mr. Wiggin will not be joining us tonight.
Okay. Let's see, we have a teacher and student rep in attendance. I'll read this announcement. This meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on Mondays at 7 p.m. on Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 37. All meeting videos are also posted to the Millis Public Schools website under School Committee. All videos are also available on YouTube. Where am I? Oh. All school committee minutes and agendas can be found on the school committee page of the Millis Public Schools website. Persons wishing to speak during open session must sign in before the meeting starts. Comments are not to exceed 3 minutes in time. Individuals may not name students, staff, or parents. All topics for discussion must be limited to those items listed on this evening's agenda, and all comments must be directed to the chair. The committee may not respond to public comments. It shall be their decision to discuss issues at a later date. All times are approximate. Are you ready? Oh, no. Do we have anyone signed in for open session?
No.
Okay. Henry, do you want to join us? Hi.
All right, hello. So we're kind of getting to the end of the year here. Only 22 days left for seniors. And there's a big countdown that we made out there in the hallway, so everybody can know. And that's pretty exciting for seniors, especially because like all the college decisions are coming out, and you can keep track of them on the Millis Futures 25 Instagram account. So if you want to see all of them, you can follow that. And with that, senior projects are also out and about. I'll just give you a couple. Hedia's senior project, Hedia Luaudi, is on April 17th, and it's a culture night in the auditorium. And Olivia Fong's senior project is this Saturday, and it's like an Olympic Games, so teams can pay to enter, and it's like a field day. There will be a bunch of games and stuff. Also, the NHS induction is coming up, and it will be on April 30th, and the students will have to give speeches to be inducted. For field trips, there's 2 field trips this week, actually, both on Thursday. The first one is Miss Streck, our science teacher, is bringing her engineering class to the Boston Aquarium. And some representatives from the Active Minds Club are attending the Kyle Cares conference at Gillette Stadium. Moving on to sports, baseball and girls tennis are off to a nice start, 2-1. And I've heard from a bunch of my friends that play baseball, their season's looking really promising. So keep on the lookout for them with their new coach. Boys volleyball is doing okay start, 2-3. Hopefully we'll get better though as the season goes on. And for clubs, the solo and ensemble concert is on Wednesday the 16th, and there's also an art show before that, so very exciting night. And it's organized by Miss Radcliffe and Mr. Poulos, the art teachers. And lastly, there's an early release day tomorrow. Exciting.
Do you guys count those half a days when you say 22 days
Yep.
left?
So
22 is,
do
do 2 half days equal a whole day?
No, because they have to come in
Oh,
for
it's
both of those
coming in.
days, so
Oh,
it's
you have
2
to wake up
days.
and
Right,
come in.
22 wake-ups, right?
22 wake-ups. You can call it that.
That'll go by fast.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Henry.
Ms. Copies, you're up. Thank you.
The 3rd grade students did a great job on ELA MCAS last week, and the 4th and 5th grade students completed MCAS yesterday and today. So they'll be having their makeups on Thursday and Friday. The first grade Spanish immersion class has completed their long-standing apron project under the direction of Senorita Alba Garcia, the language and cultural assistant from Spain. In fact, I think I found Wilson's apron the other day as we were going through things. In some CFB middle school, high school collaboration news, which is apparently a new category created for me by my colleagues, which is kind of fun. Miss Imbrugna and the Foundation's 2 students and some of Miss Scotland's middle schoolers went on a community field trip to Cravings to practice with community safety and working with money. Additionally, they've been working to prepare the 5th grade Foundation 2 students to transition to middle school. And Ms. Bruzi's class came over to my classroom today for the final grade 3 session of the year. So we enjoyed color and light in the auditorium and then flame tests in my classroom. In the middle school, the 8th grade transition night and ice cream social is happening this Thursday between 6 and 6:30 for the club's fair and ice cream social in the cafeteria, and then 6:30 to 8 there'll be a presentation in the auditorium. So Ms. Dunn and Mr. Nash have been working diligently to put that together, along with help from Mr. Fallon for the ice cream social component of the evening. 6th graders had MCAS last week, and then they are continuing to independently read books of their choice and work on timelines and annotating. And they are also headed to the McAuliffe Center in Framingham to go to the planetarium show called We Are Guardians and participate in the Expedition Mars experience. 7th grade math students are working on expressions and equations, and their MCAS is coming up the first week in May, the first full week in May. So that's a fun Cinco de Mayo activity. 7th grade Spanish students are learning how to ask and answer questions about places and what they do in their free time. And 8th grade students in immersion are learning vocabulary related to extended family members and how to give affirmative commands. And in the non-immersion classes, they're learning about vocabulary related to amusement parks and how to communicate in the future tense. That sounds like summer planning to me, quite honestly. At the high school, the guidance department has been continuing to do a fabulous job of bringing in career speakers during our flex blocks. So last week, Mr. Lower was in talking about careers in financial planning, and Millis alum Julia Krause, who I believe was class of 2018, came in to talk about industry in biotech. So that was really, I happened to be in the room for that one. It was a packed house in there, and it was very interesting for her to hear her talk about not only the skills that she had garnered here that have held her in good stead in her career, but also, how she's been able to get a good job in the biotech industry with just a bachelor's degree. So that was really fabulous. She did focus on this idea of teamwork, collaboration, consistency, and sort of perseverance as some of those life skills. And those sound a little bit like our vision of a graduate skill, so it's kind of like, it was like we almost like we set her up for it, but it was really interesting to hear her talk. So this time around, we have Daryl Hilliard coming in, who is an automotive recruiter from Mass Bay Community College, and we have Rob Bavey, who is a software engineer coming in to talk about data analytics from a credit card company fraud detection unit. So those will be for our next flex blocks next week. And the students have been really kind of positive about being given these opportunities to just even have a sense of what careers are out there. So kudos to Ms. Dunn and Ms. Canabla for all of their hard work bringing in these folks. I think this has been a really welcome addition. In additional senior project news, Natalia Olivero did a meal packing event this last Saturday, and they packed over 5,000 meals in 2 hours.
Wow.
So there were 20 students, staff, and family members in the cafeteria on Saturday doing all of that. So
That's fantastic.
that was very nice. Coming from the TIES program, they are excited to say that on Saturday, April 5th, 3 of the TIES students participated in the Miss Amazing pageant, which is the national program celebrating the abilities and accomplishments of girls and young women with disabilities. So Ellie Muscatello was crowned Teen Miss Amazing. Maddie Blocher earned the title of Junior Miss Amazing, and Maura Fagan also participated, showing enthusiasm every step of the way. And Dom Barasano was one of the escorts.
Oh, wow.
So Allie had a lovely picture, I think it was of Dom and all the girls who were there. So Ellie and Maddie have been invited to represent Massachusetts at the National Miss Amazing event in Chicago this summer, which is a great opportunity for them to build their experiences and connect with others. So we're super excited about that. And then there's some sports news that Henry, I guess, wasn't as excited about, but in talking to my softball players, they are super excited. The new softball fence is up in the town fields, so that is exciting. And the select board has approved windscreens for the softball field to increase branding and the overall experience for our athletes. I'm assuming those get hung on the fence. Is that a correct assumption on my part? Yeah, we don't have those in the dance area. And the athletic department is currently in the process of posting and holding interviews for the varsity football and boys basketball coaches. And Mr. Finney would like to encourage everyone to come out this spring and support sports. And then I'll also add in that a lot of folks in the upstairs, downstairs here got to participate in conversations with the architects from TAP A today about as we move forward with sort of the building project. So that was a really interesting experience to kind of get to sit in there and see the blueprints and talk with them and have them ask questions and us ask questions. So Mr. Mullaney was a displaced person all day, but it was nice to have like a central spot to go to. It was really very interesting and informative, I felt like.
Yeah.
It was a positive
Very
experience.
positive.
Yeah, overall I felt really like, you know, it took pieces of paper and sort of brought them to life, and it was like super useful. So,
Great.
yeah, I hope the community members down the road, whenever they have the opportunity to come in and check out the building or see more of this, take advantage of those opportunities, because as I said, it was super informative. And we've been hearing about it right along, so this is great. Any questions?
I don't think so.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move on to our action items. So we need to approve our minutes.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
I make a motion that we approve waiving the facility rental fees for the Millis Lions Club to hold their second annual holiday bazaar on October 25th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This would not include any necessary custodial fees. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'm looking at the document that is in the folder. It says 9 to 3. Maybe they need like setup time and cleanup time?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
The letter she wrote said
Yeah.
10 to 2, but that's
Yeah.
probably, yep.
Yeah, set up and breakdown.
Okay, just to make sure. And which is a total of $450.50 that we're waiving. Any further discussion? Thoughts on this? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, so we're going to move into our time and learning. Mr. Mullaney has an update for us on the strategic plan.
Yes, so this is just an update of the plan, the priorities for 24-25 that I presented back in September, and an update on those and my goals for the year. Just as a reminder, I'd like to go over our mission and vision when we talk about these things. So the mission of our schools, we're committed to developing all students as independent, lifelong learners and leaders who will contribute to a diverse and changing society. And our vision is that we will empower all students to think critically, communicate effectively, and work collaboratively as individuals of integrity, compassion, and respect. And to get to these goals, our theory of action, if we honor each student as an individual learner, recognizing that students have their own learning styles, interests, identities, passions, challenges to learning, strengths, and skill levels, if we engage and support and challenge all students through varied and culturally inclusive instructional approaches that help students take ownership of their learning and foster their social and emotional growth. And if we afford students voice, choice, and flexibility in how they learn and allow students to demonstrate their understanding in various ways, then we will have help develop those independent, lifelong learners and leaders who will positively contribute to a diverse and ever-changing society. So just a reminder, our strategic plan for 2023 to 2026, the goals to ensure relevant rigorous and relevant learning for all of our students, foster outstanding professional practice, provide a healthy and supportive school environment, and maximize our resources and physical plant. And so just a reminder, our action steps for this year in relation to those goals. Under the first goal, the priorities: implement rigorous curriculum for all students, address gaps in achievement and opportunity, provide a coherent system of supports and interventions, and utilize assessments as a tool for evaluation and learning. Outstanding practice: we want to support staff growth as educators. We want to ensure instruction is rooted in evidence-based best practices, and we want to collect and analyze data that indicates effective practice. Providing a healthy and supportive school environment: we want to make sure our schools are physically safe. We want to make sure our schools have climates that support a sense of belonging for all students and their families, and we want to support the physical and emotional health and well-being of all our students. And maximizing the resources and physical plant: we want to provide the necessary resources for 21st century learning and success. We want to make sure our physical environments support student learning, and we want to develop a long-term plan for upgrades and renovations to the middle high school building and campus, obviously with the MSBA project. So for the first goal, rigorous and relevant learning, some of the highlights so far this year: we've continued with Wit and Wisdom implementation. We're in year 3 of that. Staff is becoming more familiar with it. In a couple weeks, we're going to have a Vacation Math Academy for students at Clyde Brown, and Mrs. Knowlton was able to utilize some funding she had to make that possible. So we're very excited about that. It looks like we're going to have a good turnout at that. At the middle school, they're always looking at the power learning time block to see how that can become more powerful and to continue to address multi-tiered systems of support. The middle school also did student-led conferences this year, which really speaks to the relevant learning, because at those conferences students were able to talk about what was important to them and what they learned and with their parents. And by almost all accounts, it was a very positive experience to have kids at the conference with their parents or guardians. At the high school, the digital portfolio was implemented with our freshman class, so that by the time they graduate in 2028, they will have an extensive portfolio chronicling each year at Millis High School and how the learning they experienced relates back to the vision of a graduate and those core values.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
What format are they using for that?
I believe it's just a Google
Sites?
Google site.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, as Ms. Copese just mentioned, utilizing the flex blocks to add the vocational component about careers and trades. Ms. Copese mentioned some of them, and there was another one that I found very interesting. We had a graphic recorder here. I didn't know what a graphic recorder was, and I didn't know if anyone on the committee might know. I Googled it. I looked it up.
No, what is it?
A graphic recorder is someone who takes information and presents it in a graphic form, a visual form, so it's more easily understood by people. So taking a dense document or reading or something and creating a visual that will make it more ingrained in a person's mind. But it's been really good. They've had a really wide variety of people coming to the flex blocks. So I think that's again making learning relevant. And Ms. Copese mentioned Julia Krause, who I can't believe graduated 7 years ago. But what she's done and how what she learned while she was a student here was relevant in what she's doing now. So those are great opportunities. Second, outstanding professional practice. We have, in the idea of teacher leaders, we have a leadership team at Clyde Brown mapping the wit and wisdom modules, aligning the modules with the state standards and monitoring implementation, professional development. We have student data teams, the professional development time, particularly in the high school. Some of that time has been used for curriculum mapping. We've had our director of technology, Ryan Kameri, led a professional development on AI and how it can be used at each grade level and how we can set up the guardrails for student use. Middle school English teachers were able to attend the NCTE conference. It was in Boston this year, so we were able to send the middle school English teachers to that. Very well appreciated. We had the Spanish immersion teachers collaborating with teachers in Maynard. We had our phys ed and music teachers attend some off-campus professional development with their peers in other districts. I think in a district like Millis, a small district, sometimes it's tough. If you are the only art teacher, it's nice to be able to connect with art teachers from other districts, etc. And we had over 30 teachers have been supported in attending off-campus professional development during the year. Some of it was during that November 2nd election day when we had that as a day off for kids and a PD day, so that gave us the opportunity to send some people out. And then sometimes it's people going to conferences during the school day. Providing a welcoming environment for physical safety. We work very closely with the Millis Police and Fire. With social emotional health is a priority at all our schools. At each school, there are all school assemblies that focus on the core values and creating an environment of respect. Henry just mentioned one of the cultural awareness events at the high school coming up as a senior project. We have one coming up at the Clyde Brown School as well. That little picture there is one of the communication boards at the Clyde Brown playground for kids, nonverbal kids and other kids using the playground can use those communication boards. Middle school with the positive behavioral interventions and supports and second step curriculum supports that welcoming environment. The middle school is training student leaders, and the MARC is out of Bridgewater State College. It's the Aggression Reduction Center at Bridgewater State, Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center at Bridgewater State. The idea of squads at middle school it's kind of similar to the advisory at the high school where groups of students will meet with a teacher periodically and focus not just on academics but forming those relationships. Another opportunity for a student to have a trusted adult at the school. Restorative justice practices are utilized at all levels, and our new high school principal, Pat Nash, is very well trained in those restorative practices, so he's brought that with him to the high school. We have I Decide education on just awareness of at-risk behavior, and you know, for example, for a student who gets caught vaping, they can utilize the I Decide program, get education rather than getting suspended. So, and that's you know, been positive. We have a social worker in the middle high school building 1 day a week, which has been very helpful. And we had a new resource officer, Manganello, started a couple months now, and she's really doing a great job. We've been very fortunate with our SROs, and they do help support that safe and healthy environment. And then resources, you know, we talk a lot about grants, and unfortunately there aren't as many grants as we've had in the past, but we've used grants to supplement what our students receive. So we have the SOA grant that's expiring this year that you know, promotes inclusion, team teaching principles, and things like that. We had the final training from our Exploring History grant with social studies teachers in the middle school, and there's a credit for life here. Principal Nash got a $6,400 grant to host a Credit for Life fair for our students. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the superintendent's report, but it's really a great opportunity. So it was great that he was able to secure that grant. You know, as you know, we use our grants and revolving funds as much as we can to supplement our operational budget, using technology to support teaching and learning, and really being strategic with our capital technology purchases and so forth. The MSBA process has been, you know, very important throughout the year, and you know, as Ms. Copese mentioned, we had representatives from Tappe Architects in today interviewing middle and high school staff members about the project, and you know, kind of what are their hopes and wishes and what it might look like. And we are also very grateful for the generous support of the homeschool associations and Merit for what they do to help us maximize our resources. And then the superintendent's goals, the DESE requires the superintendent have district improvement goals that we just went over, and then a student learning goal and a professional practice goal. So you may recall my student learning goal is with the implementation of our literacy curriculum K-5, working to you know, monitor growth and achievement in reading and writing and language, so those literacy skills, and just kind of some updates. These are last year's MCAS results, and you know, as Ms. Copese mentioned, the kids at Clyde Brown just took the ELA tests last week and this week, so we'll see how those come out. You know, there are some encouraging things, and there are some things that we still need to work on. So, and you may remember this from the MCAS presentation earlier in the year. We were 12 points above the state average in grade 3 for literacy. Our grade 4, which is our current grade 5, it has some, you know, challenges, and so they were 11 points below the state average, and we'll see, you know, what happens when they're in grade 5. And then last year's grade 5, our current grade 6, were 14 points above the state average. And then we use progress monitoring during the year. And so at the elementary level, they use star reading and then dibbles. And DIBBLES is another one of those acronyms. It means Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. And M-Class is just kind of the vehicle for those. It's a lot of online assessments that we can get results quickly and those offer they help inform instruction where a student might need some help. And so it generally been positive, you know, where we were at the beginning of the year, say, you know, for 50% of the kids were meeting benchmarks for their grade level. And then at mid-year, in just about every grade level, the number of students, the percentage of students operating at grade level at that point in the year increased. So that's generally good. With our high needs students, and high needs are the students who are students with disabilities, English learners, and low-income students, or any combination of the three. Those students that are in that category, we've had mixed results. And part of it, I would say, could be related to the fact that over the course of the year, we've had a number of kids come into the school after the beginning of the school year who, you know, would be identified as high needs. So, you know, a kid that comes in January or February is taking the mid-year assessment and hasn't been with us the whole year. So that could do it. And you know, obviously kids who are in the high needs category, particularly, you know, English learners and some students with disabilities, you know, it is a challenge getting up to grade level. And honestly, we don't have the same support that we had a year ago. So, you know, those are some of the progress towards the student learning goal. And then, professional practice goal. I was looking to expand my understanding of the impact of artificial intelligence on pre-K to 12 education. And some of my goals were, we had at the administrative retreat, we spent a lot of time looking at AI and its applications, K to 12. We had the parent night in October on artificial intelligence. There's been ongoing trainings all year for the Tri-County Superintendents Group. We had PD training for staff in November, and I'm taking a certification course through Google on generative AI for educators. A couple of years ago, I took a class at Fitchburg State in AI, and what I learned then is like obsolete now.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you start with one thing and you talk about it one week, and the next week there's something better or newer. So it's hard to keep a grasp of, but you know, it's the wave of the future, and we have to stay on top of it. So those are the progress for my goals. I don't know if there's any questions or.
Any questions? No? Thank
Okay.
you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move into the chair report, which is a MSBA update. So we've already alluded to a little bit about meeting today with the teachers. We met last week first to talk about some of the more in-depth structure of the building.
Yeah, I would have to say that the meetings are getting more interesting.
Yeah,
now,
for
because
sure,
you're starting
for
to
sure.
look at the spaces and
Yeah.
and the possibilities.
Yeah.
So.
More like niche and like nitty gritty, like, oh, well, like, is the entrance going to be here? And if it's here, like, what about this and what about that? Instead of like general
And
overview.
talking about soft costs and
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah,
Which is all important.
yeah.
But
So we had a meeting just to go over some of the things last week, and then today, as you kind of alluded to, they were here all day meeting with teachers to kind of flesh out their needs. I don't know if you want to speak more to that.
Yeah, and you know, we're still very early in the early stages of the actual design. So
Yeah.
we're, you know, teachers were looking at what classrooms might be where and so on and so forth. And again, one of the important things is, you know, we have two distinct schools. We have a middle school with a middle school philosophy and a high school with a high school philosophy. So the organization is different. And the middle school wing will look different than the high school wing. The middle school wing will be organized by grade level teams. High school wing will be organized by you know, subject matter departments. But I think the real exciting part is those other spaces that we don't have now for larger group meetings, for small group meetings, conference rooms for kids to work with staff, you know, legitimate spaces for our EL learners and, you know, some of our special ed programs, so they're not in smaller rooms that are not, you know, we're not constructed.
Closets.
Yeah, they were not constructed for teaching and learning. So those, it's all very exciting. And the teachers were energized.
Good. That's great. All right, we can move into the superintendent report. You want to take it from there?
Okay. Just kind of an update. Last night, and I don't know if anyone was at the select board meeting last night, but last night the select board approved a budget that would enable us to cover the 5.64%, you know, above last year's budget that we would need to maintain level staffing. So that was, we really appreciate the work that Mike Gazinski and Jody Kersey and, you know, town leaders, elected officials, who really have been supportive throughout this whole process. So, so that was some good news coming from Town Hall. I think the budget's being presented to FinCom tomorrow night to get their feedback, and then, you know, hopefully this is a budget that then it goes to town meeting, and we really want to encourage people to attend town meeting.
Yes, in November.
And you know, this it would be nice to have a year where we're not cutting staff.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want? No, I didn't
Go
know.
on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Opportunity Act.
Go ahead.
Okay, so last week we filed our Student Opportunity Act progress report, and just to refresh people's memories, the Student Opportunity Act calls for every district in the state every 3 years to develop plans to identify key disparities in student learning opportunities and outcomes for student groups they serve, and how they will utilize evidence-based practices and strategies to address those disparities. So in other words, the Student Opportunity Act plan it's not like the strategic plan for the whole district. It's not a whole district plan. It's a plan for a subset that we've identified that there's a gap between all students and, you know, a subset of students. And the subset we chose for the 24 to 27 plan is our high need students with disabilities, EL students, low income students. Again, Millis being so small, you really couldn't just pull one of those groups out, so we used the consolidated high needs identifier for those students. And so we're looking at literacy and how to close the gap between the high needs students and all students. So the state has a kind of like a menu of evidence-based practices that schools can choose to work on. And so the evidence-based practices we've selected, supporting curriculum implementation, comprehensive approach to early literacy, and early literacy screening and support. So all of those are practices that that have been proven through data analysis to help improve literacy learning and you know, hopefully close those gaps. And so we continue to work with the implementation of high quality instructional materials, kind of like what I just talked about with the strategic plan updates. You know, we've kind of deepened our use of high quality materials, and each year, since we've adopted it for the last 3 years, there's been professional development to support teachers, deepen their understanding of the curriculum, and you know, we're continuing to do that. Some of the information in the progress report is what I just shared on outcomes of students, and the, you know, the kind of gaps. In some places we are closing gaps, in some places we're still working at it. So that was kind of the essence of our progress report, and it's something that, you know, we have to file every year. You may recall the plan itself, the 3-year plan itself, has to be approved by a school committee, which you folks approved last March, and so now every year we just do a progress report. So I don't know if there's questions on that, or okay. And then just in the packets, Tech and Accept have sent us their quarterly reports. And again, you know, we are fortunate to be a member of both of those collaboratives. They provide valuable programming, and both collaboratives are on sound financial footing, which is good.
That's why I was late. I came from an Accept class.
All right.
It's good. They're great.
What class?
It's ELL for art teachers, so ELL in the art room, so helping students with language learners in the art classroom.
That's great.
So it's good.
It's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Great. Great. Yeah,
And it
that's,
helps me
you
get
know,
my,
professional development and you know, education services. They
Yeah,
provide very
yeah,
helpful.
it's good.
Good. And then there was a question last meeting about the seal of biliteracy, how many? So last year we had 9 students, and as Ms. Copese mentioned, 2 of those 9 were, they earned the seal of biliteracy with distinction. And of those 9 students, we had 7 receive the seal in Spanish, 1 in French, and 1 in Portuguese. So, and we're coming up to that time of year where our seniors who are interested are preparing for those exams.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then just, again, a little bit more on the grant I mentioned earlier. Mr. Nash applied for and received a $6,400 grant for the Credit for Life Fair that will be held a week from Friday. And it's a program for juniors and seniors. Each student is kind of assigned an occupation, something that they'd be interested in doing, and then there's information on, you know, what the typical salary is for that, and then once they know their salary, then you create a budget about, you know, rent and food and, you know, entertainment and things like that, and they go through various exercises to see how their budget works. And there's over 70 people in various industries, ranging from financial advice to food service and things like that, where they have a chance to talk about how their budget's going to work in doing that. And it's a really great experience because it's a simulation that's realistic, and it's something that unfortunately we're not able to, that financial literacy, we're not able to get that to all our kids. So this is really a great opportunity for our kids, and I'm really happy that Mr. Nash was able to secure that grant.
That's great. We do that at my school, except we call it the reality fair.
And that's what it is, right? They run out of money.
They run out of money. They realize there's no money to do anything after all the things.
Yeah.
Is it the same, so is it the same group of professionals who do this at different, like?
I don't think
No,
so.
it's
no.
kind of like,
Yeah.
Is he recruiting people?
yeah, he's
Yeah.
got some local people,
Yeah.
and then there are some people that would do it in Needham, but they'd also do it here. But so it's really impressive, and it's a really great experience for our kids. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's great.
And then enrollment. So as of last week, Clyde Brown is at 620, up 3 students since March. Middle school, 267, up 1. High school, 296, up 1. Ties is the same at 5. So the total in district is 1188, up 5 students. There's no change in choice students. Out of district, we're at 22. 1 out of district, that's down 1. 1 out of district student came back to Millis Public Schools. And so the total in and out of district is 1210. So we're up 4 since March.
Okay.
So.
Good. All right. We don't have any correspondence or committee announcements, but we do have some new business. And there is a policy that is being proposed that we're gonna chat about.
Walk through the process.
Yeah, walk me through the process, Mark.
All right, so the process for a policy is, there's required to be 3 readings. The first reading is allowed to be waived, which the committee has done.
Always done.
Always done. Waive the first reading because who wants to read any of these things 3 times? Then you move to the second reading. The policy as presented is read and discussed. And then generally what has happened, unless it was an instance where it's a policy that legal counsel wrote for us based on a new Massachusetts law. Generally what has happened is we take the questions and feedback of the second reading, we move and approve, we move it to a third reading, which is really just to get it to.
At another meeting.
Right, we assign the next, generally it's the next meeting. Move it to the third reading. In between that initial meeting and the next meeting, any kind of follow-up questions that come out of the discussion, people digest a little bit more, process, think about edits, changes, whatever, that takes place. Then you, at the second meeting, do the third reading where you read it again. Then
Wait, do you read the revised one at the third meeting?
if there are revisions during the second reading,
Yeah.
so we could sit, if we do the second reading tonight, we could go through and we could mock it up as much as we wanted to, and then move it to a third reading. And then, yes, at the third reading, you would read
The final.
where it stands when you left the second reading. Then you have any further discussion, if there's any tweaks, any changes, you do that. Then on that third reading, you would take a vote to either approve or not approve the policy as it sits at that moment. And if it's approved, it becomes a policy. If it's not, it doesn't.
So the policy that is being proposed today is a policy on parental notification for age-sensitive instructional materials. Do you want to talk about the rationale, or do we just read it?
So first, I would make a motion that we waive the first reading of policy, the proposed policy number 5.12.1 to go to a second reading.
Okay. So is there a motion to do
So I just moved to waive the first reading. So I need a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're gonna need to write
Aye.
this down.
I know,
before
I know.
this process.
Okay, so the first reading has been waived and voted upon.
So now I make a motion to have the second reading of proposed policy 5.12.1.
Second, sorry.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So we'll approve the reading.
We're going to make a motion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion
Now-
to approve the reading, second reading, has
So
been, is
now-
carried.
Now we read the policy.
Read all the language. Would someone like to volunteer to read the policy?
I can read it.
Okay.
Do you want me to read the rationale first or the policy?
Just
Nope,
read
just the
the-
policy.
Policy,
Yeah.
okay, so this is a proposed policy on parental notification for age-sensitive instructional materials. Purpose?
Nope, policy number.
Oh, policy number 5.12.1.
Okay, perfect.
And this policy ensures that parents and guardians are informed about age-sensitive instructional materials used in elementary school classrooms. It establishes a process for notification and allows for parental involvement in their child's education regarding topics that may be considered sensitive. And then there's some
Yep.
definitions.
Yep, read everything.
Age-sensitive materials, content that discusses topics such as family life, mental health, or any material deemed sensitive based on community and parental concerns. Parental notification, the process of informing parents, guardians about the use of age-sensitive instructional materials before their presentation in the classroom. Policy guidelines, notification requirements. 1. School officials must provide written notice to parents, guardians at least 60 days before introducing age-sensitive instructional materials in the classroom. 2. The notice must include a summary of the content, the educational objectives, a list of instructional materials, examples, books, videos, lessons, plans, or lesson plans. 3, parents, guardians must have access to review the materials upon request. Teacher and staff responsibilities. 1, teachers must submit planned age-sensitive materials for review by the school administration before classroom use. 2, school administrators are responsible for ensuring compliance with this policy, addressing any concerns from parents or guardians. Review. This policy will be reviewed annually to ensure it meets the needs of students, parents, and educators. 2, the superintendent of schools will distribute a copy of this policy to each principal by September 1 of each year. Exception, parental notification relative to sex education. For additional requirements regarding parental and guardian notification relative to sex education, please refer to policy 5.12.2, which is currently, should I just say it's currently 5.12.1. So that would have to be adjusted to 2.
Well, no, this one should be 2, I think.
Yes, this one should be 2. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
that's part of our edit process today.
perfect.
All right, do we want to read the rationale now?
So I don't think we have to read.
Or talk about
We
it.
don't need to read the rationale,
Okay.
but yeah,
Talk about it.
if somebody wants to give the initial rationale, and then
Sure.
we can talk through.
Do you want me to?
Yeah?
Okay.
Please do.
So this policy is being introduced due to concerns that parents and guardians are not being adequately notified when age-sensitive instructional materials are introduced in elementary school classrooms. A recent example is the book Hatchet by Gary Paulson, which was assigned to the 4th grade class. While parents were informed that Hatchet would be read, they were not provided details about the sensitive topics contained in the book. Do you want me to go over the topics? Yes? Okay.
Sure.
These include the main character, a 13-year-old boy, witnesses his mother's infidelity, the death of the pilot flying the plane, the boy's experience crash landing the plane alone, the physical and mental trauma he endures after the crash, a scene in which the boy, having lost hope of being rescued, attempts suicide by cutting his arm with a hatchet. In addition to the book itself, a classroom handout contained the following discussion question. Brian is so insane with despair and disappointment that he tries to kill himself the night after the plane leaves, but awakes at dawn reborn. Why does Brian hate the blood, hated what he had done to himself when he was the old Brian and was weak? This question explicitly references the act of suicide and prompts students to reflect on it, potentially exposing them to distressing emotions without prior parental preparation. It was later brought to my attention that this question has since been reworded or removed by the curriculum provider currently used by CFB, indicating recognition of its sensitivity. However, its prior use demonstrates the need for a clear policy ensuring transparency when such materials are introduced. While Hatchet is a valuable story of survival, its themes could provoke difficult emotions or raise complex questions for young students. Parents and guardians should be properly informed so they can prepare for discussions with their children. This policy ensures transparency and parental involvement in their child's education when sensitive materials are introduced. And by requiring detailed notification at least 60 days in advance, parents will have the opportunity to review materials and prepare for discussions with their children. And then there's just some sources provided about how Hatchet is generally suited for 5th grade and above, where this was read during a 4th grade class. But you guys have that there. So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part, so Simon & Schuster, the publisher, recommends it for 5th grade and higher. Common Sense Media rates it appropriate for ages 11 plus. Scholastics list Hatchet as guided reading level R, which corresponds with grades 5 to 7, and Lexile Framework for Reading says it's generally suited for grades 5 to 7. So basically all of the kind of rated age kind of guardrails on it puts it at a 5 to 7.
But I also do think
5 to
it's,
7th grade.
if it's appropriate to say at this time, important for parents to be aware when there are these certain, most specifically the suicide discussion, being aware so that they are prepared to support their child if any emotions or concerns should arise.
Discussion now. All right, any discussion, thoughts, edits on the policy that was presented?
And I don't know if anyone has questions for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I'm curious what, like, there's no policy about this. There's nothing similar that we have already. Right? So what's the, how does a book get decided on?
Yeah, so this is part of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum.
That's what I was going to ask. Is this part of the curriculum?
And it's part of the grade 4 module for the curriculum we purchased. And, you know, there is a sheet that goes out to families about the modules, and I don't know if you received.
We receive like a weekly email, like not like a newsletter, but an email
like
from
what?
the teacher that says what's going on, and it was more about upcoming books, Hatchet. We're really excited to read it.
Right, yeah. And so, and the idea is, So it's in the grade 4 of the Wit and Wisdom that we have, and it's part of module 2, which Wit and Wisdom is broken into different modules, and there are different themes in each module. So the module 2 is building on key topics in history, science, and literature through the study of excellent texts by reading and responding to stories and nonfiction tests. We build knowledge of the following topics, and Module 2 is about extreme settings. So that's kind of the overarching theme that this book would fit into. And in Module 2, we examine how people react to extreme environments. Students will analyze what makes landscapes such as mountains challenging. We will ask questions, how do humans survive against the odds? And so Hatchet is the novel that's associated with Module 2. There's a Ray Bradbury short story, All Summer in a Day, and then some scientific readings, Mountains, by Seymour Simon, and the SAS Survival Handbook, The Ultimate Guide to Surviving Anywhere. And then poems, Dust in the Snow by Robert Frost, and Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. And then there's a link with architecture. So those are the kind of the extreme conditions texts that they read. And then the questions that kind of the overarching question, how does setting affect the characters or speakers in the text? What makes a mountain environment extreme? How does setting influence character and plot development? How does a challenging setting or physical environment change a person? And I think that was a big theme in the book Hatchet. Questions to ask from home. As your kids are reading the various things, what's happening? What does a closer look at words and illustrations reveal about this text deeper meanings? And then there's some suggestions for some books people can read at home. Gary Paulson has a series of books. And then places you can visit to talk about different aspects of the book. So, it is like the ratings tend to be higher, like 5th and 6th and 7th grade. Part of the reason why it was in the grade 4 module was because one of the Wit and Wisdom things is to provide rigorous curriculum and materials. So it's kind of like a stretch reading for students.
I think from my understanding, in my discussion with Maureen, that if it's Wit and Wisdom, they've actually moved it back up to grade 5, but because the grade 4 has already read it, they won't be able to obviously move it to grade 5 next year.
Next year.
Right. So the curriculum provider is saying it should go back up to grade 5. But obviously, so I don't know if there's like a different, what Maureen will decide there, but that was interesting to note that they seem to recognize that it should go up.
Yeah.
Go up.
And just, for some further information, there have been, the teachers review all these materials, and there have been some books where Wit and Wisdom offers alternate texts. And there have been some books that after the teachers reviewed it, they said, we're going to go with the alternate text. For this particular book, as you mentioned, there's some challenging themes in there. The book has proven to be pretty popular with kids, and so, it was not one that they thought they needed to use an alternate text.
I guess it's this is more kind of conceptual and not book specific, but the idea of parental notification, and if we are teaching a book or introducing something into the curriculum or at a grade level that is lower than what objective ratings are, I don't see why we wouldn't be notifying parents very explicitly. I mean, this may sound like an extreme example, but I don't think we'd be putting R-rated movies on at Clyde Brown without parents knowing. And this is, yes, that might be extreme, but this is kind of the same thing. Like, if it's really should be grade 5 to 7, whatever we're doing, and it's not just one book, it's just conceptually. If something is being introduced into a classroom that is actually rated as age appropriate for something higher, parents probably should have a heads up. I appreciate the rigor concept. I don't know that these topics, I think you can get rigor without talking about suicide and some of these other topics. Like, rigor to me is challenging, you know, books written at a higher educational level or higher reading level, not kind of what social concepts it introduces you to. Like, I get where it's going, but I'm not sure I don't think you need to go into these topics and say that that's the rigor behind it. I think rigor is challenging kids to do something more than what maybe their grade level is. I get that. You know, you do it in every subject, math, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But again, so I think there's pieces of this. I'm not, the subjective of the idea of what's sensitive to one person and not, that's a dangerous slippery slope, I
Yes, we
think.
have to edit some of this.
But I do think that if there's a objection, basically an objective rating system, that parents should be notified in a reasonable time frame if what's being taught is in excess of what they're rated. And I'll be perfectly honest, I think that it would be, in the current political and social landscape that we're in, it would behoove the district to put something like this in place for a variety of reasons, for a variety of topics and concepts that people may feel shouldn't be taught at certain grade levels, or concepts that shouldn't be introduced in certain grade levels or in schools at all, and to be able to tie it to everything that's being taught is tied to it's age appropriate based on something objectionable or objective is probably not a bad place to put the district right now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not even specifically on this book per se, but if we know that, and again, it's not saying don't do it, it's saying if the district chooses to introduce something at a lower grade level than it's rated,
The recommended.
we're just telling parents.
Yeah.
Not saying we're not doing it. It's not banning books. It's not banning concepts. It's not banning anything. It is saying we're going to get in front of this. We're going to be transparent. We're going to tell people exactly what's going to happen. And if they choose to, if it's pop, whatever, I mean, it's, again, it's like it's sex education and the other thing.
Yep.
If they, for whatever personal, religious, et cetera reasons, want some alternative scenario, that's a conversation to have. I personally think it would would be better for the district to do something like this now instead of waiting and reacting to something that may be more controversial.
I feel like I've gotten notifications about movies that have been like I feel like I've over the last few years, like if it's a like to your point, like even like a PG-13, like PG-13
Yeah,
rated
yeah.
movie being
Yeah.
shown to sixth graders. You know,
Mhm.
I don't remember if that's what
Mhm.
it was, but you know I can. But was this different because it's part of the curriculum itself and it wasn't a teacher choice that might have like kept it from, you know, just
Yeah, well, as I said, like, notice did go up, but it wasn't the detailed notice that Shane
Yeah,
is describing.
No, it wasn't. So it was just, we were excited to read it. That it was more, I think, about the whole survival aspect of it. So I had reached out because we typically read kind of like what our kids are reading, and my husband and I hadn't. And Mr. Nardone got us a copy of it and read it, and we saw, then once we were reading it, we saw the actual really kind of traumatic themes that went on throughout. And it was just for us, I know that if I had just skimmed that email and not been one that reads what my kids are reading, I wouldn't have any idea of what happened in the book. Fantastic book, like the story and everything, but I think I would say the notification to be able to support that these are the themes of the book so that I can get ahead of it for if my child comes home with any concerns or questions or anything. Because this, the first time could be exposure to a parent having an affair, obviously the suicide attempt, and the other, like when the pilot dies, it's a very descriptive death, and you know what I mean? So just
Yeah.
a heads up would have.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's also where a challenge is. I mean, when you say age appropriate, is it the infidelity? It might be the infidelity for one person. It might be
I think the
death
language
of the pilot
needs to
for
change.
another.
And that's why I think it can't be a subjective, age-appropriate or
Yeah, I can't-
sensitive. I think it
Needs to
would
be a
really-
concrete.
Right, and it would
There.
be, by all accounts, it's rated as a grade 5 to 7 reading material. Full stop.
Well, I'm talking about more of like the definition here.
That's what I
Age-sensitive
mean, right,
materials
like,
should be
It
like
should be, if they're.
grade level appropriate materials.
Right,
Um,
and if it's being used in a grade younger, there's a formal notification to parents.
I would,
like it leaves it too open, right? The way that it's written right now.
and I totally get that. Can I ask, is it middle school that you do suicide prevention?
grade
Education.
7
Grade
starts
7?
with it. Yeah.
So I think my thought about this from the suicide part of it is if it's suitable for grade 5, and I'm just talking this out because I agree about the subjectiveness of it. If there's a 5th grader who gets the book and is reading it and is exposed, say, for the first time to the topic of suicide and without parent notification, so we're exposing them, yet there's no kind of support put in place when we do suicide prevention or awareness in middle school. Like, it just seems kind of, just talking through the probably one of the bigger traumatic moments in the book.
And so what I would say is that, again, because I don't think we can do it at specific topics, but I think that's a fair point, that and at least a fair question, not necessarily to put in policy, but if we have educational material that addresses topics that are significant enough that as a district we choose that it needs some kind of awareness, that if we're introducing educational material that addresses those topics, that we move that awareness concept also down to that grade, to that point. Like if we're doing suicide prevention, if this book, let's just say it's in 5th grade, if we're doing suicide, if we know we're putting this book in 5th grade, we should be doing some initial suicide prevention in 5th grade.
Something with the counselor, not necessarily the 7th grade program, bring it down.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
but,
Exactly.
but
Have the
acknowledge,
counselors
hey,
are aware.
If we think these kids are old enough to be taught materials that address these, yet we also know that it's significant enough that that these concepts need some kind of prevention, awareness, something.
Yeah, the awareness, yeah.
Then we got to bring it in at the same time that we're using it in educational materials, not waiting 2 years later. Again, I don't know that I don't know that that goes into policy. I don't think it can, but I
No.
think the concept, that's a
Yeah, I think.
good point.
I think, something like this where they add, where suicide is part of the book, or suicidal ideation, like making the counselors aware. And that's something that happens, we do that a lot in the schools. Like, okay, we're doing this particular subject matter. The counselors are aware. If some kids have a certain response, the counselors are aware. We keep our eyes open and things like that. And then if there are times when you do need to do kind of that pre-screen.
I would say certain topics are big enough, like in this specific case, I don't think it's having counselors sitting back waiting for kids to come. If we think topics like this are age appropriate to be used as educational material, bring the counselors in to the room for 15 minutes and do something. It's like there are times, whatever, like the Saturday morning shows or things like that. Like you'll be watching some show and then the commercial in between it is, hey, say it's a kid show and it's talking about suicide or drugs or, frenzy and drugs. All of a sudden there's a commercial about, hey, here's the program, here's the thing. If you see
if
it,
you need help. Yeah.
right, if you need help, if you have a friend who you think has a problem, come and talk. So I think we should have our counselors going in to the room during the book and being like, hey, you guys are talking about this topic. Just a 2-second, if anybody has any questions, anybody, has any concerns about themselves, friends, etc., we're here. Especially if we're talking about 4th and 5th grade, because that concept of counselors is completely different in that building than it is over here. Clyde Brown, they are not guidance counselors. That is not.
Yep.
That's not what they are. So those kids have no concept of going to one of them for something like that.
Right, they would go to their teacher.
Right.
Yep.
I think we need to be careful because I don't know that us here really can determine whether we should be proactively introducing the idea of suicide to 5th graders, just because like it sort of. I mean, I think it's 7th grade. I think is when that is generally happens. It's not just us deciding to do it. Then I think that's and I think. I think that, and I would leave it to the counselors to sort of clarify this, but I think there are probably reasons why it's not widespread in 4th grade and 5th grade that we're really introducing this because of the emotional development of children. So, you know, I totally understand. I think I think the objectiveness of having the objective ratings of the books, as you were saying, Mark, makes sense. I'd be careful to introduce it to make more of an effort to introduce it when I don't know really where I don't know what the experts say is appropriate for that. You know, and I think it, you know, to the minds that aren't fully developed or aren't ready for that, that may not be the recommended thing. You know, I don't know that. I think I would leave it. I think I would want to know what our social workers and the buildings think.
Well, I mean, we're not here to decide that right now.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
I
not
just
saying
think
put
I'm
it
just
in
this,
this-
you know, I'm just kind of like.
But it does,
adding
but
on to
it
the-
does beg that, like, if it's okay to talk about it in this realm, why is it not okay? Like, to your exact point, because the question there is, why is it even okay for this book in 5th grade if you're not supposed to talk about suicide prevention until 7th grade?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because they say it's good, you know, from 5th grade up. It's,
Right.
It's, you know, but I think that by 5th grade, probably even earlier, but by 5th grade, children are aware of the concept and aware of like more, you know, in like a aware of the concept of death and life and like, you know, in a sense they're aware of it, so they can process it. But the proactive nature of it, I'm just not sure when that.
And unfortunately, you can have some kid who's very aware of it because of their own personal history.
Right.
Sure. Yep. I'd like to circle back to the actual policy and make some edits to some of the language, if that's okay. And so I'm on the doc that you shared with us, Jana, and I kind of put it in edit format, and I just edited real quick the number so that we can just make that number 2 on the top there. In my thoughts, and I put this in, but we can take it out, for the definition of age-sensitive material on that part there, I think that the deemed sensitive based on community and parental concerns is really vague and wide open. So can we say any material above grade level maybe or something like that to make it more concrete?
I think what I would pull age-sensitive materials out of the definitions, and what I would do is I would just say, so purpose, established process, policy, notification. Number 1 in notification of requirements, school officials must provide written notice to parents and guardians.
Well, no, above that, under definitions.
I'm saying strike age-sensitive materials out because I'm going to strike age-sensitive materials from the rest of the document. So you don't need to define it.
Do we need to define parental notification? Do you think? Can we
You don't
just-
have to. You could strike the whole definition section out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so number 1 would read, school officials must provide written notice to parents, guardians.
I think 60 days is a lot,
Okay.
personally.
Well, we can go back to the dates.
I was even saying, you know, it could be in the beginning of the school year when you have your plan, or
Yeah.
30 days before, or whatever.
At least we'll just use X days before introducing instructional materials that are rated, that are intended or rated for grade levels higher than they are, for grade levels higher than they are being introduced.
Then recommended by the publisher or,
Yeah,
because it,
yeah, like, officials must notice introducing materials at a grade level lower than those, lower than,
That recommended by the publisher.
correct.
Are these all on the same doc that I am?
Yes.
You can see my edits.
Yes.
I'm just making, like, we don't have to keep them in.
And then notice must include summary of the content, educational objectives, list of instructional materials. I'm not
Maybe-
sure lessons plans.
Yeah.
I'd say a list of the materials so that people can read, view them on their own. Yeah, and then the lesson guardian must have access to review them.
Maybe like themes, summary of the content / themes, maybe. Themes in the book. I don't know if that, or like,
Yeah, themes might be.
Because there could be a book that is recommended for a higher grade level, but it's just simply because of the type of like
Yeah, the vocabulary. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
There could be like 4
Well,
swear
right.
words.
Well, not even like that vocabulary. Just like this is a hard
Whoa,
book to
right,
read.
or
Yeah.
like,
Right.
you know.
You know, like Plato. Like what?
Well, but like the summary of the content could just be like, here's this book hatchet, it's about survival. Like, but there's so much more happening in there, and I think that's what you want to get at. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think themes are a good idea.
Okay. Some sectional
And I think,
materials.
again, the piece of it is, this notification is going regardless of themes and regardless of what the subjective reason is. To Sean's point, it may be a book that's rated for a grade higher because there's 4 swear words in it, and that's it. And it's, people are going to look at it and they have it and fine, like,
Right.
whatever.
But the topics are.
But it's not a.
The themes
right,
are,
it's not-
are
it's-
like.
This is
hidden.
really simply, you're gonna get notified every time we're using something that is for a different grade level. You as a parent have the right and the obligation to figure out what it is and whether you have concerns with it or not.
So I mean, that could introduce a lot of notifications about about materials beyond grade level that are not of concern for the idea of this.
Well, but right, and like
right?
back to school night, you just give your syllabus to the parents and be like, here's what we're doing for the
And
year,
here's the list, and
potentially.
here are the
right?
5 things we're gonna do over the year that are technically above grade level. Here they are.
That'd
Here's the
be
list
good.
of books we're gonna read, here's the list of articles, here's the movies we're gonna watch, here, and it's just there.
And if you pivot in the middle of school year, oh, parents, here's an update on what we're changing to.
And honestly, I don't know how many. Like the teachers would know how many have that higher Lexile rating or
Yeah.
higher than recommended. Oh, excuse me, lower than recommended by the publisher.
But to Shane's point, there comes a point where you have an idea, and I don't know what that is. I don't know, and it may be different subject by subject. I don't know how much of a syllabus is set. You know, you got your
Right.
college syllabus, right? You know exactly what you're doing all semester.
Yeah.
I don't know if in this setting that's
Well, wit and
first
wisdom,
quarter, second
yeah.
quarter, like,
Wit
I
and
don't-
wisdom is pretty prescribed. So we like.
so they can walk in an open house, and that's
And here are the modules. Here
or
is what
you
we're
know,
doing.
August 15th, the email goes, class assignments are set. The email goes, here's your list, and it's only going to take one time to go through, because most of the time people are using the same stuff every year. So it's going to take you one time to just go through and say which ones are higher or lower, and you're done, and then it just copy and paste.
I wonder if
year
it
after
should
that.
just say then, like, school officials must provide written notice to parents or guardians before introducing instructional materials. Does it need to be 2 months ahead of time, or
I
like,
think
does there
it
need
can't
to
be
be?
the day before the lesson starts.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's got to be some reasonable. I would say it has to be at least 2 weeks. Ideally, it's. Again, I guess I just push on. And it may be different subject by subject. How how far in advance do you know? You may not know exactly what week or exactly what day you're going to start, but how much of your yearly program is unknown throughout the year.
Right. And again, I would say with wit and wisdom, there's very little that it, like each module has its text.
Well, we've got two
its-
teachers, so could you?
I'm a math teacher. I've been teaching.
But that's my
25 years.
that's my point though. Like it's going to be potentially a subject by subject. But like, do you know what you're teaching all year from day one?
Basically, yeah.
You know
But
pretty
I
much.
might I might introduce something that's more like currently relevant, topically relevant. So like
Yep.
in a social studies curriculum or something like that. I mean that happens. Like you might want to bring something in that's
Yep.
that's like really like relevant for whatever's happening in the world.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think like are we the reworking of this policy? Are we straying from the point of the sensitive nature of what's being discussed in these, like, where are we going towards grade level materials versus like acknowledging that there are sensitive topics that like we want to notify parents about in advance when they're coming up? I mean,
I think you run a slippery slope. I think you run a slippery slope if you try and put into a policy subjective topics or a subjective idea that, again, one person's going to pick this and one person's going to pick that. And you are going to have people who are going to have philosophical, ideological differences on something that could be put in a classroom that if you start saying, we got to make sure we're not going to tell everybody about something that's sensitive or offensive or something, like you're going to open up a can where somebody's personal ideology doesn't agree with something, and now you didn't inform them, and now you didn't tell it. So you got to have something. That's why, if it's at least grade level appropriate, you're at least saying we're teaching at grade level. And
right. I agree, and I think the moment, like, I wouldn't even try to like list topics for sure. Like I don't think there's
Yep.
like as soon as you start listing one, there's a never-ending supply of,
Yep.
of potential topics,
Yep.
right? I mean, I'm in my experience, like I've seen plenty of proactive notifications about sensitive things that are coming up, just sent out to parents, and working in high schools that there's that's a thing, and I wouldn't want to keep that from happening, by I'm thinking a lot about this, and I think the grade level component does make sense, but the more I think about when I think sensitive topics in the sense that they may not be sensitive to everybody, but they may be sensitive to people who have a certain experience base or a certain background, and so. I'm kind
And
of
maybe that's kind of where, if you know what the book is,
right.
and you kind of preview the book, read the back, whatever, as a parent, and you say, well, my child's background in this is kind of different than ordinary,
I think it's
because otherwise you're like, okay, the book had infidelity in it, it had a death in it, it had
Suicide.
the suicide, it had those three things, and there's probably other things you could list that might impact a kid who has a particular background in history. So that's kind of like telling the parent we have this book, it's at a higher grade level, or even if a teacher had a, like we can send this form out for every book, you know, because that's the module. This is what we're reading. So, you know, if there was something in, you know, the Ray Bradbury story that, you know, might strike with some kid, the parent knows, okay, they're going to be reading Ray Bradbury, you know, all summer in a day.
So I think maybe for you, the words age sensitive is what we should strike out. And so I'm wondering if we should say, like, for not age sensitive instructional materials for the policy or considered sensitive, but like above grade level or like above grade level topics or themes. I don't know how we might change the phrasing of that.
I think we're removing age sensitive.
Well, the
right?
policy is called
We-
Policy on Parental Notification for Age Sensitive Instruction Materials. So like what might you put
So,
for that?
Instructional
we
materials
just take
above
age
grade
sensitive out of
level.
that. Yeah.
I mean, eight, like,
Yeah.
potentially.
Just have it say the on notification of instructional materials. And then under the purpose there, it also says age sensitive. This policy ensures that parents and guardians are informed about age sensitive. So just instructional material
Well, instruction there I would
above
say-
grade level.
Correct. In elementary school classrooms that are above grade level.
Instructional materials. It establishes a process for notification allows for parental involvement in their child's education regarding topics that might be considered not sensitive, but
Wait, where are you?
so the last word of the purpose.
Involvement in their child regarding topics that may be.
Age
That's fine. That part is fine
Okay.
because that's why we're letting parents know that we're using materials that are higher than grade level.
More mature.
Right. Because some of it may be sensitive.
But I think if we don't explicitly say that we're talking about sensitive themes, I think saying above grade level is shady. Because
Well, no, it says sensitive in the last
Right.
line there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. The age, it's the age part, I would get rid of it, but the sense, I don't think it's about the grade level, I think it's about the sensitivity of the topics, but I understand the grade level for the objectivity of determining what to notify about. I think the counseling staff in the
So
district
does
could
the la-
identify topics that like we should notify families about because they know the that's the group I'd want to know what they think, what topics they think should be notified about, and then therefore what we call them. You know what I mean?
So if we leave it like this, for the purpose, this policy ensures that parents and guardians are informed about above grade level instructional materials used in elementary school classroom. It establishes a process for notification and allows for parental involvement in their child's education regarding topics that may be considered sensitive.
Yep.
Does that work for you?
I think so. So are we? Is our process that we're approving a policy tonight?
No,
we're drafting
we're
something
drafting
that-
it-
that-
we're drafting
that then
it.
we sit on for 2 weeks
Right.
and
Yeah,
digest
I'm fine with
and
that language.
And then you have like think time for 2 weeks to see if
Right.
there's anything else we want to add, and Bob can take it to his people and see if they have any
we can run
thoughts.
it by Andy
then
and make
right,
sure
we'd have
that.
to-
By our
Counsel.
legal
Yep.
counsel, yeah.
Yep.
The only other thing where it says here on that I thought we should talk about is teacher and staff responsibilities. Number 1, teachers must submit planned age-sensitive materials for review. Should it just say planned materials? For review?
I didn't know if we even needed teacher responsibilities, more of just making sure the school administrators ensure compliance with the policy and address any
policy.
concerns for parents and guardians. Because I assume all of the materials are reviewed or approved, submitted and approved at the beginning of the year. Or since it's wit and wisdom, it's kind of like baked into
Right,
the
it's been
plan.
vetted, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so,
So just strike that whole line about teachers.
yeah.
Make that number 1.
some of the content I just put in as kind of like placeholders of
And I
how
mean-
it,
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
Number two, I mean, we need to leave it to explicitly call it out, but it's also, it's their job.
Because they're not saying almost.
Right.
Right. Right.
It's- whether it says it or not, it's,
Right.
it's
The job.
That's why we're here.
So should we write
So we probably could strike the whole
administrative?
section of teacher and stat, and then it just goes to review.
Okay.
And for number one, dude, like, we don't really review policies every single year.
I wasn't sure what.
That's what
Yeah.
it says on, I just went and looked at the sex education parental notification one, and it says that on the bottom of that one.
And that's what I leveraged.
I was actually looking at it to see if it gave you a time, like, 'cause the 60 days seems like a lot to me. I don't teach like that, and the arts of room is very different. So the 60
And
days to
you're
me
at
is
the high
like
school level
anxiety
as well.
provoking for me to have 2 months out planned. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing for the next 2 months. Depends on how fast the kids work. Are we going to get to this project? So that was like, oh my God, 60 days is a lot of days to give that notification in advance. But I don't know if it's already planned out. Maybe they'll know it and be okay with that. That's the only other thing that, like, I think,
Yes,
like,
I-
I don't know if,
I do think there could be something that, like, someone goes to a professional development.
Yeah.
They get a resource and they're like, this is so good, I want to use it.
maybe it could be like 2 weeks
Yeah,
or something.
right.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think that would be, that would allow for that kind of, when you get something and you're like, oh, I have to share this with my kids.
Do you think that's enough time?
Yeah, because so when I read up on the book, and it was a different experience from when I actually read the book. But that can be done in 2 weeks.
And 90% of, and again, I would, like, it has to be done in 2 weeks, but not to put in policy, but something to think about administratively is,
Give parents the syllabus on
For a
open
lot-
house.
for a
Right.
lot of
Open
this
house,
stuff,
give
we
them the
have-
syllabus.
Yeah.
then you're covered,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you're just
And we
done.
have-
Yeah.
And then you're only worried about some random one-off, which, again, if you're in the high school bringing something in from current events, the chances of being not age appropriate or below grade level when you're in the high school is going to be virtually zero.
So technically, this doesn't apply to the high school because in the purpose it says elementary school. Do you want to broaden that so that we're covering more bases in this climate that we're living in right now?
It should address the whole district.
Yeah, and I had put in my email that I did think it would benefit all of the grade levels, but I left that for discussion versus editing it into the.
Informed age instructional materials, yeah, it should be,
In elementary schools is what it says.
it should say,
In Millis Public Schools.
yep.
There is, like, for some books that they read at the high school level, there really isn't an age.
Right,
Like,
sure.
It's just an
Right.
adult book. It's,
And that's what I mean, like, at the high school, this really isn't, but
Yeah.
but yes, it should apply to not single out the elementary school or not single out the elementary and middle school. Just, because again, kids aren't 17 until they're juniors.
Juniors.
So throwing an R-rated movie on and,
well, yeah, something
freshman
like
year.
that.
you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
that's.
You can't unless you have the license to show it. You're not allowed to. That's considered a public viewing.
Can't watch Ferris Bueller. So I watched Ferris
Huh?
Bueller's Day Off, Catholic elementary school in like 5th grade.
Wow.
It's against the law. Can't. It's considered public
Well,
viewing.
if you use an excerpt, it's fair use.
Only if it's 10% of the movie length or 10 seconds, whichever is shorter.
It would be helpful, I think, if we had an understanding from the counselors, like, if you decide to go the syllabus route, like,
if there's like 5 topics that they know are pretty intense, and there's books that are going in those themes, like if, I don't know what's on your wisdom form, if it gives the themes or not.
Yeah, it's big picture,
Okay.
like extreme,
Yeah.
people's survival in extreme conditions.
Because I mean, it could say survival for Hatchet, but
That's what
like
it does
as you
say,
said,
yeah.
you know, it would be helpful if, oh, by the way, these are some of the larger themes.
Some of the
some
themes
of
that,
the themes in it.
you know,
I don't know if that's,
I can check
yeah.
the counselors and see what themes might be, you know, do like a crosswalk with
The teachers and the
these,
counselors.
like these themes are showing up in our books, you know, and get the counselors' take on that.
Yeah, because the school may not know what a student's family or living situation may have experienced. So giving that type of information to the family so that they can be like, all right, this is coming, and, you know, be ready or proactively say,
Right, and I know that our kid, when that happens, like, we know, and the counselors reach out. And,
obviously not in policy, but like just as
Right,
practice.
right, yep.
All right. Any other thoughts on this? Think about it for a couple of weeks before our next meeting. I think you have access to these notes that I just made on the document. It's the one that Shana shared with us in the email.
Okay.
I just
all right.
made the edits. You can see what I
So
crossed
can
out.
Share that with Andy and get his take.
Yeah. What's up,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy?
I make a motion that we approve to move to a third reading of policy 5.12.2
Two.
as amended tonight.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Is there anything else in the new business that we need to talk about? Get back to my sheet here that Sue shared. Folder. I think that's it, right?
So,
And then we have some executive session to talk about.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
make a motion to adjourn, not to return to open session, adjourn to executive session for the purposes of strategy with respect to collective bargaining unit A.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Mostrari. Mr. Powers.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned until after April vacation. April 29th, we will be back. And yeah, that's it, right? No, there's Millis. The MSBA stuff is in May. The meeting, the quorum. Yeah, okay. So we'll tell you more about that April 29th.